the next thing I want to talk to you about after how to read an article is how to identify theories. So if we look at identifying theories, what I want you to do with theories really is apply them to what you're learning about your topic. This doesn't seem obvious, what I mean by this, but once I show you some theories within the context of a research article, I think it'll become more clear. So let's go back and find a sociological article about gender and pay. So if I look at the sports nexus and gender injustice in Studies in Social Justice, so the main theory that's being applied here is actually the sport nexus. So the sport nexus is a theory that's being applied in this article. And it's going to be the primary one. So here you can see that the sport nexus described in the introduction is then applied to the idea of citizenship, is applied to the idea of the gender binary, and is applied to the idea of gendered economy within the sport nexus. So everything that's discussed in the article is discussed in terms of this theory. Now, most articles can include more than one theory that's explicitly discussed. That's not the case here, but actually this provides a very neat example of how to apply theory. This is exactly what I want you to do. I want you to make an argument, not specifically about a theory, but about your topic. And then I want you, in each section of the body of your paper, to apply one or more theories. So if I wanted to talk about women's pay in sport, I might look at different theories. I might look at conflict theory and feminist theory, for example. And so each of my body paragraphs, I would want to talk about how the things that I'm finding in these articles relate to conflict theory or feminist theory. And some of the theories you're going to discuss in your paper are theories that we've discussed in class, and some of them are going to be theories you find in the sources you read. So the next thing I want you to look at after identifying theories is how to do your final draft. So your final draft is ultimately just a polished version of your first draft. What's going to happen is I'm going to get your first draft, and using track changes, I'm going to rip it to shreds. I'm going to tear your first draft to pieces and return it to you bleeding. This is going to be okay because all I want you to do for your final draft is to revise the comments that I make on your first draft. So since your first draft is largely complete, you don't actually have to write a lot more. You just have to provide a polished version in which you pay attention to spelling, grammar, and writing style. It's also important to me that you avoid passive voice. Passive voice is a sentence which removes the action of the sentence from the subject of the sentence. So, for example, the boy threw the ball is an active voice sentence. The ball was thrown by the boy is a passive voice sentence. Now, when we're talking about children throwing balls, it doesn't matter whether we have an active subject or a passive subject. But when we're talking about social inequality, it really matters. So, for example, an active voice sentence would be, the police officer beat the suspect. The police officer is doing the action, and the suspect is receiving the action. A passive voice version of that sentence would be, the suspect was beaten by police. Well, that makes it sound like it was the suspect doing the thing. But in fact, that's not the case. So what we've done is, by using passive voice, obscure what really happened. So I really want you to avoid using passive voice. I'll mark it when I find it in your first draft. But if I find it in your final draft, that's going to be less good. Finally, I want you to be sure that your reference page is formatted using ASA style. So I'll provide a guide to doing this on Moodle. But please pay attention to how your references are formatted. This makes it easy for me to read. I know it sounds like the ultimate in pickiness, but in fact, when I'm checking your sources, it's the way I'm used to reading. It's the way sources make sense to me, and it makes them easily findable for me. So please be sure to use ASA style in formatting your reference list. I want you to submit each component of your paper in the relevant Dropbox on Moodle. I'm using Turnitin to accept your paper submissions. So that means that I will get a plagiarism score. So if your paper shows up as a high percentage similar to another paper already in Turnitin's database, then I'll notify you and we'll talk. I don't expect that will happen, but I will be using the Turnitin software. I think it's important to disclose that to you. But that also means that I can use Turnitin and Moodle to talk through your paper with you, so I can record voice feedback and use track changes. So that's how I'm going to be grading and editing your assignments, and your grades will immediately show up in the gradebook when I'm finished grading. Again, please email me if there are any questions about how to complete your research paper. I'm going to post this video on Moodle, and you can look at it when you have time. Thank you very much.